Good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Foxfyre Studios, where I have Joe Carriker on here to talk about, well, pretty much himself. We're here to talk about Joe. Um, Joe is one
Thank
of
you. I
the.
appreciate it.
Well, any chance I get to have you on here is always a delight. The first time I had you on here was GMing for Blue Rose a few weeks back for myself and some of the Green Ronin folks, and it was a blast. It was a fun time.
It really was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, so normally people will be tuning in and watching us on Saturdays where I do our live streamed tabletop role playing games, sometimes in a learn to play setting, sometimes in a totally off the wall one shot,
Yeah.
whatever goes. I will try and get all sorts of stuff running on here. Eventually, it's just I need the time. But it's always nice to be able to tie in a weekday show. So, yeah, I mean, we might as well just get right into it. So let's
Sure.
start off by telling everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you've done, just a little bit
Sure.
about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Joe Carriker, and I am a uh, designer, developer, writer, editor. I've done all sorts of things within the tabletop RPG industry, and I've been at it since about 2001. I kind of got my start with the whole like D20 boom of that time, and just kind of rolled right into it, and I've never quite stopped. I originally started as the developer, well, writer, and then developer for Sword and Sorcery Studios' Scarred setting, which was a D20, which was a D20 sort of post-apocalyptic fantasy setting. Um, and from there, I kind of expanded. So Sword and Sorcery Studios was a design studio owned by White Wolf Publishing.
Nice.
And I've been a big White Wolf nerd for many, many years, even before that. And so I just kind of rolled right into doing some writing on Exalted Second Edition. I helped do a whole bunch of design all throughout that. And then I got to work on the what we used to call the New World of Darkness, which is now the Chronicles of Darkness. And During that time, I also did a little bit of design work for Wizards of the Coast, specifically the Storm Rack, and the the Tome of Nine Swords is called, and I did a little bit of design work on that as well. Most recently, though, I have since about 2012, 2011, 2012. I've been a line developer for Green Indian Publishing. I've started off as the developer for A Song of Ice and Fire, and kind of saw that through until the conclusion of that license, and then I sort of switched over to Blue Rose, where I remain to this day. I'm also a novelist, a baby novelist in comparison to my career in RPGs. My first novel, Sacred Band, was released in 2017, and then I followed up with a novel called Shadow Tide for Nisaba Press, set, which is set in the Blue Rose sort of setting. And then, yeah, I've kind of done a handful of short stories here and there, and a novella follow up to Shadow Tide, and we're getting ready to re-release my first novel, Sacred Band, by Nisaba, and then follow that up with a sequel to Sacred Band. So, yeah, keeping busy.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a busy 19 years.
It has. It really has.
Yeah, fun fact, I graduated high school in 2001, so, yep. Uh, yeah, so you have, what was your new one or your second edition called?
Yes. So Sacred Band is a novel um, about a team of LGBTQ plus superheroes, and it's set in a world that has superpowers, but superheroics are actually illegal. There was a couple of decades where costume vigilantes and all of that was a thing, but after a while, as sort of the wheels of bureaucracy tend to, the laws caught up with them, and now the notion is, if you want to fight criminals with your superpowers, you join a superpowered uh, troop of law enforcement. If you want to defend, the country, then you join the superpowered arm of the military and that sort of thing. But as often happens with marginalized populations, in Sacred Band, a small group of queer characters who have superpowers discover that something is going on, something bad is going on to queer people and to some queer people. And the people who are responsible, law enforcement and the like, are not only not doing anything about it, but they're completely apathetic. And so, as often happens in marginalized populations, the characters sort of decide, well, if anybody's going to protect us, it's going to have to be us. And they do what is basically illegal and form a superhero team in order to go take care of all of this. And so the first edition of Sacred Band was released in 2017, um, and Nisaba Press acquired it about a year and change ago. When I think we announced it like last Gen Con.
Nice.
And so it's gone through a re-edit. I got the opportunity to rewrite the last chapter of the original edition was a little rushed. Like you could tell that it was literally my first novel. And so I've gotten the chance to go through and rewrite that, and then also wrote an entirely new epilogue chapter at the end of it. So for folks who've already read Sacred Band, there's some good extras there waiting for you.
Yeah, it's gotta be nice to have that capability to be able to go back afterwards and it's like, you know what, I didn't like this. I don't like how this turned out.
It
Let's
feels like
redo it.
such a luxury.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's a theme that's not covered too often, like pure LGBTQ. Um, I don't know the word that I want right now. Visible. Um,
Yeah, a lot of times, I mean, even with very, um, friendly and welcoming and diverse creators, we often still only see queer characters sort of like folded into other people's stories. It's actually pretty rare to find, uh, not just, a queer focused, single character story, but actually an ensemble cast,
mhm.
right? Like all of the characters in Sacred Band are queer, and a lot of the other people that they interact with in the novel are also queer. It, and it's funny, Sacred Band got its start, of all things, off of a discussion on my Facebook. Because a number of years ago, the Marvel had announced that they were doing a new X-Men comic, and one of the titles was going to be the team was made up entirely of women. And so that, of course, fostered some conversation. Folks were everybody had opinions, kind of a thing.
Yeah, very polarized opinions.
Yes, yes, in a lot of ways. But someone was like, I could see why a group of women would just want women on a team. It's like, but I couldn't see that with any other quote unquote minorities. Like, it doesn't make sense that there would just be like a team of gay X-Men. To which my response was like, well, you clearly don't know any gay people,
Yeah.
because it's like I'm sure you know one or two people, but the fact is, a lot of gay people not to put too fine a point on it, if we could, we would never interact with straight people at all. Like, I know gay people who their barber is gay, their, the shops that they go shopping at are gay. Everybody that they associate with sort of a thing. And it's like, that happens with marginalized populations because even with our dearest friends, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting being the only queer in the room sometimes, because there's a very different dynamic at work. And I feel like sometimes people don't get to see don't get to see who we are when we're mostly around other queer people that we're close to. In many cases, our chosen family. And I think that was one of the things I wanted to show with Sacred Band was like, these aren't just, a character or two among the ensemble cast who happen to be queer. This is queer characters with a queer story that also isn't necessarily a romance.
Yeah.
There are some subplots. There are some little subplots sprinkled in here and there, but it's definitely not a romance story or anything like that. It's a superhero story. It's just the people who need protecting are queer and other marginalized people.
Yeah, and nowadays with visibility being a little bit more forefront, like every month we have June for Pride, and then everybody kind of has their Pride stuff. More and more people are feeling more comfortable in coming out and having literature like this where it's not about strictly the gay aspect or the queer aspect. It's about life with a queer tone to it, which is awesome. It could be the gateway book for people. It's like, I feel alone. Oh, wait, look at this. This has people that I can identify with. And, that's pretty awesome. Like, I am on a server for Vampire the Masquerade. It's done by the Lore by Night guy. He does the Lore by Night podcasts. It's a fabulous freaking server. And when Onyx Path came out, or White Wolf came out the other week with, I'm old school White Wolf Vampire Revised Edition. When they came out the other week with all of the different Pride clans, it was freaking awesome. Like, we've got Pan, queer, just the straight rainbow, there's the trans flag, the bi flag, the lesbian flag, anything that you want, they covered it off. And we have a bunch of people that are using them on their names, and people were talking the other day about like just coming into themselves and being able to do this. And the server, despite it being a vampire server, which some people may have negative connotations with, we have zero tolerance for any shit. You are yourself. You come in. As long as you're a decent person, you are welcome. The moment you cross that line, get the fuck out.
I love that.
It's a safe space. While we get to play monsters in a game, we still get to do it safely. And having books like yours, I think, opens up the opportunity for people to start to see that, hey, there's people just like me, and I'm not alone, and the representation is there.
Yeah, I thank you for saying that. It's funny because I've received questions before, about like, well, I'm straight. Like, is there anything in this book that I would be interested in? And my answer is always like, it's a superhero story.
Yeah.
But like that question, I mean, every time I've gotten it, it's always been very respectful, right? But that question occupies such a place of privilege because, and I always find a way to put it in very approachable terms. But like, my first reaction is always to be like, all of the stories I had growing up were straight stories, and I still enjoyed them. I still found something in them.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a magical skill. You can do it too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, when was the first time you watched TV and actually seen a gay couple kiss?
Oh my God! Yeah, it shook my world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even now, watching a TV show with my wife, it's like they're kissing.
Yes,
Right?
yes. Yes, exactly. No, and it's great. Like I have had some really incredible people, some really incredible folks reach out to me, like a number of teachers and like therapists and community organizers who have said that they've bought multiple copies of Sacred Band
Nice.
because like folks who come in, who are questioning and that sort of thing, and who are just like hungry for stories that are them, where they can see themselves.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why representation is so important because honestly, part of the difficulty of coming out as queer is that there's no big media. There hasn't been for a very long time, and it's only very recently that this is changing. Changing, not changed. Um, we for so long we never saw ourselves, right? Like we never saw this is what my life could look like. This is what I could look like when I'm in my 20s or my 30s or my 40s. Here are my various options. Here are the,
Yeah.
and like fiction, fiction offers us blueprints to some degree, right? It says this is what life could look like. It's aspirational in a lot of ways. It's meant to be inspirational. It's part of what the human impetus to storytelling is. It's when we ask what if, we're able to imagine things that don't exist yet for us and potentially pursue those. Right? That's
Right.
super powerful. And that's why representation is such an important thing to me because for so long, like, I was always really salty, and I'm still super salty. So don't misunderstand. That like growing up, all of my straight peers had all of these incredible like examples of what they could do with their lives, right? Like, oh, maybe you get married and you have sort of a very like white picket fence sort of experience, or maybe you become boho artists and you move out to this place and this is what your life looks like, or maybe. But I never saw that for queer people, except for what I refer to as queer tragedy porn, right? Like where the queer people are either die by violence or they die by disease because yeah, and it the characters involved, the story may not even do it maliciously. It may actually do it as like a heartbreaking moment for some other character, but it's like it's it's gay blood for straight tears, and it makes me very salty. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so like I never got to see this sort of thing, and in the past decade and change, a lot there's been a lot more of it, and I love it, But you know, I've been asked before, like, isn't like when is enough? When is enough? And I'm just like, we haven't explored all of the possible nuances of ways that we can live queer lives as queer people, so we're not done. And even once we have, there will be versions of those that people still haven't seen, and they need to see them, so we're still not done.
Yeah. It'll never be
And
done.
it's just exactly these stories are ongoing as the world changes. What queer lives look like in those worlds change.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could talk about this forever.
You know what? One day, maybe we will. A few weeks ago, or maybe a month and a half ago now, I was on the Rantcast, it's called. It's typically an Age of Sigmar stream, and we did basically like a women in tabletop gaming session. There was four of us. There was the host, Andrew, Mr. Mephisto, but then we had one of his friends, and then we had Monica Specca. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her name. She does a lot of the she's working on the Exalted, new revised Exalted now. She's done
fantastic. Okay,
yeah,
yes.
she's done stuff with Scion and all that.
Awesome.
So like we had the women in tabletop gaming, like there's no reason why we can't do like queer representation in gaming or queer gamers or something. I mean, like there's me, there's you, there's Troy, and that's just three of us right off the very start that I've talked to before from Green Ronin. Like, I'm sure there's more.
There is. So for many years at Gen Con, we've done a panel called Queer as a Three-Sided Die. And it has always been a panel of not just queer gamers, but queer industry people. In fact, the very first one was myself and Steve Kenson, Wesley Schneider, at that time we're at Paizo, and Jeremy Crawford with Wizards. And we basically did the first one there and have done so many of them. Like, there's been an annual one every year at Gen Con. We've also done them at other conventions. And we like to bring in new folks who are in the industry, who are queer, to kind of talk about both being a queer person in the industry and what that sort of looks like, but also queerness in gaming. How to bring in sort of NPCs when you're designing a setting. Where does queerness fit? All of these sorts of topics. And we've had so much to talk about over the years, and there's still
Yeah, it's a topic that'll never go away.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to do that in a really accessible sort of online forum. Although for those who are interested, some very kind folks have recorded the Queer as a Three-Sided Die panels over the years. The past, 5 or 6, I think,
nice.
has been the wonderful folks from Tabletop Gamers, GAYMERS. And if you just jump onto YouTube and search Queer as a Three-Sided Die, you can find a bunch of videos of all of those panels and the like.
Awesome. I am just trying to get a notepad or something opened up here to make a note of that. It's just faster to grab an actual pad of paper sometimes.
No,
and was Queer as a Three-Sided Die, you said?
Queer as a Three-Sided Die, yeah. Which, full disclosure, was an article written by Terry Amthor for, I believe it was White Wolf magazine.
Nice.
Where he first talked about being queer in the industry and finding queerness in games and that sort of thing. And so when we decided to do this panel, it was literally the perfect title for it. So in the years since, we've had the opportunity to have Terry come out and sit on the panel with us and sort of chat about some of that stuff. And so it's been great. Yeah, it's been really cool.
It sounds fun. Yeah, there's a few questions that kind of popped in my mind, but I think I might write those down and save them for an actual roundtable discussion one of these days to actually really get dug into like queer creators, really. Like, one thing I like about what I'm doing here with my channel is being able to talk to people who are in the tabletop role-playing game industry and even the gaming industry as a whole, whether it's video or board game, and getting their opinions and their views and their experiences on it for people who are wanting to get into that kind of work. Like, we all see tabletop role-play game creation as this I don't want to say golden wonder job, because it's like anything else, it has its pluses and minuses, but
it definitely does.
And I'm kind of blind to a lot of the outside world, but on my Twitter it is curated for the tabletop role-playing stuff. I don't see much else outside of this. So having Troy has just joined us. Speaking of the devil.
Hi, Troy.
Yeah, sorry, he just sidetracked me there. I don't know where I was going with this now. Getting the opinions of people who make this kind of stuff, especially from a queer standpoint or a people of color standpoint, is nothing but good things can come of it. Because, like I was mentioning behind the scenes, that I've got something I'm working on right now, and I'm thinking, okay, well, how do I do this respectively? I want to have people who are gay and trans and people of color and whatever else I can throw in, because it makes everything, I don't know, it sounds kind of cheap, but it makes everything better when you have more people able to buy into it.
Yeah, well,
It's more experience.
It also feels bigger, right? Like it feels more real to some extent. Yeah, like I mean, for me, the world is composed of all sorts of people, right? And it's funny when we get questions as to like, why is it so important to be diverse, blah blah blah. They sort of make it seem like folks from minority and marginalized identities are sort of tacked on, rather than like they sort of see themselves as kind of the world, and the rest of us are just sort of clinging to the edges of their of their kind of concept of the world. When to me, having a world that doesn't have people of color and neurodiverse people and queer people and people who are disabled, and like all of these various like permutations of humanity, like if your setting doesn't have that, it's funny. In Queer's the Three-Sided Die panels, I sometimes talk about setting building, and I always ask the question, where are your queer people? And I will tell you, whether I'm reading a novel or playing a game or whatever, especially if it's a setting that is not sort of the real world, that is not sort of Earth as we know it and understand it, I want to know where your queer people are, because as a queer person who grew up in a society where it was dangerous to be openly queer, and so you had to hide that. If you show me a setting that has no visible, obvious queer people, I assume that your setting is dangerous to be queer in. I assume that your society, whether you intend it or not, is homophobic. And your queer people, it's not that they're not there, it's that they're there and hiding. And then I, as somebody who grew up looking for, the little tells that you can find in other queer people, even when they're sort of hiding, that whole gaydar thing, I start looking for who among your characters is clearly in the closet to me. So, and I have a whole article written about my sort of fascination with Stucky, the Steve and Bucky concept of the two of them in a romantic relationship from the MCU, and that's my prime example of that. MCU, it took you so long to even have the mention of gay people. I absolutely 100% assume that your great little MCU universe is homophobic as hell. In fact, it's more homophobic than the real world, as far as I'm concerned, because there were no gay people.
Yeah.
And even now, it's still you one mention in a support group. That's not representation.
Yeah, and the moment that somebody mentions that somebody might be, there's tables getting flipped, there's stuff getting thrown across the room.
Oh, yeah.
It's pandemonium.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So yeah, my baseline has always been like, if you don't want me, queering my headcanon of your characters, then give me the real thing so that I don't have to make assumptions.
Yeah. Yeah, don't make me come over there, because I will.
That's right. Because I will gay everything in your setting. I will gay it up.
Earlier on today in one of the Discords I run, it's the Rat Catchers Guild, which is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Yeah, I set up a channel for like a little bit more serious talk while we have a lot of stuff on our plates. People are working from home and not able to see their family members and their friends, and all that went on. And we have our current state of the world with the riots and everything else. So a place that people can kind of just open up a little bit more to let the discussion happen. Early on today, we ended up getting into inclusivity in games, and the topic shifted to Dragon Age, like specifically the games, which is kind of... it was neat watching it, because I knew later on today I was going to be here talking to you, and while you might not have had a huge hand in it, Dragon Age is still a big IP for Green Ronin. But it was nice to see that there was people mentioning that like talking about the characters that may have been gay. Like it may not have been said in game, but in other situations it was mentioned, it was canon, it was open.
Right. Yeah, I love that. So incredible. Such an incredible series.
Yeah. Yeah, it is one that I have every intention of running on stream.
Nice.
But...
Well, you let us know when that happens.
Oh, I will. There might be plans to get one of the other games going first, depending on timeline for that. And I think you had a hand in that as well. That was the one that was just announced yesterday. It was with a Chronicle system, Shattered Age.
Yeah. So the Sword Chronicle is going to be released in August, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's what was said.
Basically, we have taken the system that was kind of the engine that we used to run Song of Ice and Fire, which was originally written by Rob Schwalb, notably. So we took that system, and since we no longer have the license to do Song of Ice and Fire, we went ahead and separated everything Westeros out of it, and then kind of filled in some other areas. Malcolm Shepard did the development work on Sword Chronicle, and his work is always amazing. But he really outdid himself. Like he created some sort of fantasy ancestries that players can belong to, because of course in Song of Ice and Fire everyone is human. And so he created some sort of fantasy ancestries that you can belong to. We took for a while I was doing these occasional Chronicle system. They were PDF only. So among the things that we've had in those is like sort of like a magic system. And a little more fantasy-ish magic system, and so that's gone into the book. And there's just a wide variety of other things that have gone in there that has resulted in a really fun game. And yes, one of the chapters at the end of the book is an example setting that specifically uses Sword Chronicle to sort of describe itself. And it's a lot of great work.
Okay, so Sword Chronicle is the system based upon a Song of Ice and Fire Chronicle system, and then Shattered Era is the prepackaged setting that will be shipping with the book.
Exactly, yes. It's the last chapter, and it was written by Jane Gates and developed by Malcolm, and it's just tremendous. It's so much fun. It has all of the great, because one of the things in the Chronicle system is the creation of a noble house or other organization to which you belong, right? Like we use the same mechanics to reflect the different keeps for the Night's Watch when we were working on Song of Ice and Fire, and for Wildling tribes, right? And so we've taken that concept and sort of ported it over. So it's not just noble houses; it can also be like merchant clusters. And all of these bandit kingdoms and all of that sort of thing as well. And so it's so much fun. It's really, really well done. And I did the editing on it because obviously of my years on Song of Ice and Fire, and I'm super excited.
Nice.
Super excited to see that come out.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It was kind of cool to get the announcement the other day and then find out that August.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times, a lot of developers get into the Kickstarter, and then a year later, the book will come out. It's kind of cool that within 2 months, we might actually have it within our hands. At the very least in PDF, right?
Yeah, definitely in PDF, yeah. I believe for now, the intention is to keep it in PDF, but I suspect once everything gets, once we get to a point where things are more opened up and that sort of thing, there will be folks looking at that, but there's been that hasn't been solidly established yet. So
oh, okay, so PDF only at this point.
It'll definitely be available in PDF.
Nice. Oh, it makes it handy when I'm doing my stream games because it's kind of hard to have a big
Totally.
clunky book right in front of me.
I feel you. I feel you. I mean, I run games with nothing but PDFs
Yeah, I
and things
still
like
prefer
D and
book.
D Beyond. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Books will always have a soft spot. Just being able to sit on the couch while basically cuddling with my wife, like she's doing her thing, I'm doing
Sure.
mine, reading the book. It's I
Yeah.
don't know, it's peaceful.
Sharing the same space. No, I feel you.
Yeah,
I feel
it's not the same as holding a e-reader right here.
Yeah, having moved cross country twice, because in 2007 I was hired as the developer for Vampire the Requiem by White Wolf.
Nice.
And so I moved from Portland, Oregon to Stone Mountain, Georgia. And then in 2012, I moved back from Georgia to Oregon. So I ended up dumping so many of my physical purchase books just because it was so expensive to ship them. And I was just like, yeah, I'm an e-reader nerd all the way these days.
Yeah.
There's something a little I admit it. There's something a little like hoarding dragon-ish about having a single device that has all of my books. Like I love the concept, honestly.
No, I get that. Being able to get, well, even a lot of stuff that you wouldn't find physically nowadays. Like, I do a lot of
Right.
comic book reading on my e reader because it's
Oh
easier to
yes.
get, like, entire tomes of comic
Oh
books on
yes.
there. But at the same time, there's nothing better than looking at your bookshelf full of tabletop role playing game books.
You're not wrong, and I
You know,
certainly still
it's.
have plenty of those.
Yeah, well, at the very least, all the ones that you've worked on in the past will deserve
Yep.
a top shelf there.
Yep, it's true.
Sorry, just tell my daughter what I want from the store.
No worries.
She wants a slush, so she's got to buy me one too.
Nice. Excellent. Excellent.
So slush and
Good.
Reese's peanut butter cup. Um, yeah, so jumping over to chat quickly to see if there's anything that
Yeah.
we've missed. Um, yeah, there's a few comments when we're talking about the. I keep on freaking forgetting the word. Queer representation stories and whatnot.
Oh, Synchro Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Your mug game is on point. Yeah, your
Thank
D20
you.
mug is getting commented on.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then like Troy says, to hold Blue Rose in your hand, you can't beat it. I haven't had that pleasure yet. I do want the book, but for now I'll settle with the PDF. But Dragon Age, I was looking at the other day, like I had it in my hands, and
Oh,
it's a
so
beefy
beautiful.
book.
Yeah.
And like the
Yeah.
art in
That.
it, and the stories, and
Yep. I admit I have a fondness for RPG books that can also double as home defense devices.
yes,
But
yeah. Why use a sword when you can have a big RPG book?
right.
Uh, sorry. Well, this is so unprofessional.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm telling her to surprise me with the flush or slush flavors. The flush savers. It's been a long day.
That's fair. Yeah, that's very fair.
So, I mean, no parent likes to pick their favorites. But if you had to pick
Oh,
one favorite that you've worked on so far in your experience, what would you say it is? Like one game.
one game line. Oh, that's really hard. They all do so different things.
They really do.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem is that like I like telling different kinds of stories. Um, I have to say, goodness, That's really hard. The reality is um, for all that I have run a limited number of campaigns of it, I think I really, really adore Mutants and Masterminds. Um, that game has such, like, you can literally run anything with it, and it's one of the things I really like about it. In fact, so much so that usually when I have an idea for a game um, that doesn't have an obvious answer to, well, what system would I run this in, it usually goes right to Mutants and Masterminds. I love the mechanic of the hero point, which is like, look, I know a bad thing has happened, whether because it's your secret identity or because you're, a particularly feral character who falls to frenzy, or you're, claustrophobic or whatever, or because, oh, it sucks, the building collapses and the villain's body is nowhere to be found. All of those instances get you a hero point. And it's a great way to be like, yeah, it sucks that that happened, but it was good for the story, and here's a little piece of candy, like to lessen the sting of it. I also love the incredibly innovative damage system that it uses, especially because it's so, like, it doesn't use hit points, it doesn't use that sort of thing. It's literally like every time you get hit, there's a resistance check that you make to see how you respond to getting struck by something of that strength. And the more times you're hit, the harder subsequent rolls become, and it's extremely elegant. Yeah, so, and it's funny because of all the games I've worked on, I've probably worked on Mutants and Masterminds the least. Like, I've done one book for second edition Mutants and Masterminds, the Book of Magic, which is, of course, a very comic booky sort of version of mystics and magicians and that sort of thing. Like, I'm a big Doctor Strange nerd, and but yeah, like, probably Mutants and Masterminds.
Nice. Yeah, that's one system I haven't had a chance to try yet. I want to. It's just finding the time.
Yeah, I feel you. Believe me, I feel you.
Yeah, I kind of lurk on the Mutants and Masterminds Discord server and just kind of watch what goes on. It's like, you know what? I want in. I want to play.
Yeah. Where do I sign up?
Yeah. But yeah, like I was talking to, I think it's pronounced Apuk the other week, and it's like, let me know and I will get you. And it's like, you know what? That is awesome. I need the time. It's one of the systems I want to try out.
Yeah, that's
like I haven't heard a bad thing about it. So. Okay, so we are getting on to the hour mark almost. So we'll keep on going for a little bit longer. But if anybody who is lurking in the chat has anything that they want to ask.
Please do.
Oh, Troy just did. But anybody else aside from Troy, if they have anything that they would like to ask, feel free to drop it in the chat. We'll get to it. For anyone who's watching later on YouTube, if you have something you want answered, either stop in at the Discord server, Joe's kicking around there, or post it there, and I will make sure that he gets that question, and we'll get it answered on YouTube. Okay, so now, Troy's question. Does Joe have a secret genre he would love to write in?
Oh,
like Western or Merman?
So, I love... so all of the fiction that I've done has been very, I don't know, practical, sort of realistic, even when we're talking about people with superpowers, and, fantasy, characters in a fantasy setting that does include psychic sapient animals. Like, there's still sort of, like, tend to ground that sort of writing in a very, like, practical, what I hope is accessible style of writing. Though I love the writing of like the Gormenghast novels and literally everything that Tanith Lee has ever done. Just a high Baroque, weird style of fantasy. Like I would love to write something in that. The reality is, though, I mean, it's something that I've explored in gaming. Like that was kind of one of the reasons why I did so much work in Exalted. Was because I love doing that sort of thing. Like I, rewrote a bunch of the like spells in the main spell book for Exalted Second Edition, the Black and
Nice.
White Treatise, and just did a ton of that sort of like weird, kind of esoteric, sort of lushly baroque weirdness that is tons of fun. Like I love reading it, super super flavorful. And so I would love to write fiction in that genre at some point, but I'm definitely not sure how well I could do, which is part of why I want to do it.
Yeah, there's only one way to find out.
It's true. It's really true.
Yeah, I have the first edition Exalted upstairs on my bookshelf. Like going
Nice.
back in the day, we played that when we were in basic. Well, we're in trades training in the military. There, a few of us were playing
Oh yeah.
tabletop role playing games.
Yay.
So, yeah,
I love me some Exalted. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah, it's been many many years. I'm looking forward to seeing the new edition that comes out, the lighter touch that Monica's working
I'm
on.
very curious. I am extremely curious to see that. It's going to be fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, so from Buddy Christ here, has there been any project that you're not a part of that you wanted to be?
Oh goodness.
All of them.
I mean, that's the problem, right? Like, I want to work on everything. There's I'll broaden that a bit. There's several games that, so for the most part, the games that I've loved, I've gotten to work on. There's a couple games that I'm quite fond of that I have not worked on before. That, like, if something were to happen and we were to get slightly changed in the way our planetary orbit works, and we suddenly had like 5 extra hours every day, then I would probably go hunting work from, like I love Shadowrun, and would dearly love to do some Shadowrun work again, time permitting. I absolutely love me some like Call of Cthulhu, and that would be a great deal of fun. And so yeah, there's one or two. There's one or two, and yeah, and there are definitely plenty of games that I like don't know about until they come out, and then I read it, and I'm just like, oh, I would have killed to have worked on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, so.
Well, the nice thing about that, though, is how many games ever stop at a core book? Right?
It's true.
Once
Yeah,
the core
it's
is
really
done, it's all expansion from there on in. So you want to do magic, you want to do a Western
Yup.
theme. That's where the real magic comes into play is, despite the best intentions of every designer and every publishing company, there's only so much room in a book. And stuff has to get dropped off and left on the floor until it can get picked up and put back together in another book. Like having setting books is golden for those who love
I
the
love
world
them.
building aspect.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And it's funny because I mentioned, we were talking before the stream began, and I mentioned that like a lot of designers who have been designing for as long as I have, or in fact much less time, professionally, a lot of them have their own games, have put together their own game systems, and et cetera, et cetera. But so like supplements is totally my game. I play best, I usually say I play best in other people's backyards, and I love finding a game that I like and working on material to expand and broaden it. That is totally my game. So yes, very much like that whole like, oh, I would have loved to have worked on this game. I probably still could. I just need to find like 4 more hours a day, sort of a thing.
Yeah, which is kind of funny because we were talking on Twitter earlier about naps and everything else, and you know what? Even if we had extra time, would we really use it, or would we just sleep more?
Probably take naps, more naps. Yeah, God knows
Yeah,
I would.
yeah. You know, having the ability to be able to go nap at work would be kind of nice.
Right, delightful.
Yeah. Yeah. So that answers Buddy's question there. Yeah, like I kind of said before we started this, as a GM, I do minimal prep, and for the last 2 weeks, I was thinking I should write something down. I should get a bit of a framework to talk about, but here we are. I've got
That's
no
okay.
framework whatsoever. You know, if you ever want, though, Troy wants a Wizard of Oz RPG. So if you can make that
Well,
happen, you'll have a friend for life, more so than you already do.
there's there's one or two fiction properties that I love that I would love to do RPGs of. Like I don't know if you're familiar with. Oh, and I'm totally blanking on her name now. That's terrible. She wrote a series called the Dragon Prince, not the Netflix animated, but a Sunrunner Cycle is the name of the two trilogies that are part of it. Why can I not remember her name?
Yeah, I'm just trying to Google
Oh,
that
that's
now, and
yeah. So it's in the writing itself is what I consider to be romantic fantasy. Um,
Melanie Ron.
Melanie Ron, that's her. Yeah. So Melanie Ron's Sunrunner Cycle is it's set in a constrained setting, like it's this very very large island that is divided into territories, each one of which is ruled by a single noble house. And the noble houses have their own sort of history and their own character. And the main characters obviously mostly either come from or serve these. It has a type of magician called a sunrunner in it, and their powers are really cool. It's an extremely cool like system of magic, and it's very like political. Like one of the sort of big things that the setting has is every year everyone gets together, like all the noble houses come together to this big festival where they like re-swear fealty to kind of the High King sort of a figure. And so of course these festivals, which like fill up a week, are full of intrigues and backstabbing and secret romances, and it's awesome. It's such a great series. I would love to make an RPG out of that. Yeah, so I feel you. I feel you, Troy.
Yeah, like going through a bunch of big book series, you're reading through these and you're thinking to yourself, this would be a phenomenal RPG. There was one or two that I was talking about the other day, and for the life of me, I can't remember what they were, but it would be awesome to be able to run around in an RPG setting in this world.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, like when they were mentioning Wizard of Oz, I was telling you about a thing that I've got on the go in its infant stages right now. But one of the ideas that I have there is tying in like fairy tales, because most fairy tales have some sort of basis on reality at one point or another, but the
Right.
lives that we lead. So being able to go and dive into Alice Little's world of Alice in Wonderland, would be kind of fun to play as like characters on the outside looking in at what's going on,
Love that.
like the Zetascope series that they do with the Alice stories is just amazing. Like they do darker twists on
Yeah.
fairy tales. Like there's the darker version of Snow White and Alice in Wonderland and Robin Hood and a bunch of others. Like I'm not gonna lie, they are a little bit more on the sexualized aspect of
Sure.
comics.
Yeah.
but the stories that they tell, like Alice in Wonderland as a horror story, there's some really great stories that they tell. So to be able to do something like that in an RPG setting be kind of neat. Just the other stories.
I love that kind of thing. Yeah, I love it when an author takes sort of an established fairy tale and gives us a retelling of some kind.
Yeah.
Like one of the other sort of big long running series, other than her Valdemar material that Mercedes Lackey does, is a series of these like retellings of fairy tales, and they're just delightful. They're so good. I super dig that.
Yeah, there's so many ideas out there that are just ready to get mined, not including the ones that have already been done a little bit that could use a retelling. Like there was a conversation on the Green Ronin forums earlier about what setting would you like to see picked up by Green Ronin and made into an RPG, and of course I had to say Firefly. Right?
Nice.
Firefly would be the perfect setting for the age system. I mean, the age system as itself is not... It's not a heavy system. You're able to actually tell full-bodied stories with that system.
Totally.
Yeah, and like Troy saying, fun. The Book of Mormon age. I can see it now.
Yeah, I have to say, that is one of the incredible things about working with Green Ronin. Like, I don't know of many other companies that do the sort of licensing that GR has done. While still balancing with their own really, really rich in-house systems. But I have had the experience of doing exactly like you were talking about, reading a book and being like, oh, this would be incredible. Well, that's how the upcoming fifth season role playing, that's how that whole license came about, was that both Jane Gates and I were geeking about N.K. Jemison's Broken Earth cycle, and which starts with a book called The Fifth Season. And oh man, both pointing out the areas where it would make incredible role playing and a style of role playing that is not really terribly common. Where the community that you're building is an important part, the community that you belong to, a lot of the rewards being things that you bring back for your community, not your personal loot kind of a thing.
Right.
And just, the ownership of Green Ronin were, incredibly willing to listen. We're incredibly willing to listen, and obviously they don't go for every proposal that we bring them, because
they would never have enough time.
Foolish, right? Yeah. That would be foolish because we are a bunch of very excitable nerds. But I mean, it was nice to feel like we brought this serious proposal for a game that could be genuinely innovative. And they were, not just willing to listen and entertain what we had to say, but to agree with us and go out and take the steps and, incur the cost of picking up that license so that we can do it. It's incredibly gratifying to have people who believe in our opinions in that regard, who not just believe them and sort of like them, but trust in our opinions as industry professionals, that if I find something and I think, hey, this could sell, this could be innovative, this could be amazing, and kind of be listened to, that's an amazingly spectacular feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, and then once you see it all put together and words on the pages and the beautiful art that will obviously go with it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be a real sense of accomplishment to go from, hey, we should do this, to, hey,
That's
look,
a cool idea.
Yeah, we've done this.
I tell you, there is no feeling, no matter how burnt out, because the process for putting together an RPG book can be extremely taxing and extremely like it can get drawn out. So much so that like if you're the developer, from the time that you wrote the outline for it to the time when production hands you a proof that says all the art's in it, it's all laid out, go through and find any final mistakes. I mean, that can be ideally over a year. Sometimes it can be multiple years. And you've literally looked at this thing over and over and over during that time frame, no matter how worn out you are by work on a project, whenever you like, get that final proof that has all the art, and all the layout, and all the rest of it's always just a magical moment. It's so great.
Yeah,
It helps that we have. Of course, it helps that we have an incredible production department, particularly Hal Mangold, who, by the way, happy birthday, Hal. Who honestly has the golden touch when it comes to the visual aspect of creating our books. Like, yeah, all praise to the Hal.
Yeah, the only ones I have so far are Expanse and Dragon Age, but those two are some beautiful, beautiful books.
Just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yes. Just gorgeous.
Yeah, so like I was saying before, I gotta find time to run Dragon Age, and Expanse for that matter. The first time I ran Expanse was last October at a convention. It was the first time I've ever ran a game at a convention. And it was the first time I ever ran the Expanse. Was just, Kate, I'm doing this. I've read the book. I've studied up on it. Let's go to the convention.
Good to go. Yep. Good to go.
Yeah, we are there.
For, like, stacked first.
Yeah, that was a fun weekend. I'm kind of hoping that we get to go back and do that again this October. Yeah, I'll have to hand in my trophy though. I won. I was an awarded trophy for the work I've done locally for our tabletop role-playing game communities. So it was that was a special weekend.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, and I'm sure it's very well earned.
Well, some people think it is. I, on the other hand, will always undersell myself. So
that's okay, because I have found that the individual, we have the least objective views of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Far wiser to listen to what other people think of us.
Yeah, I'm going to doubt them anyway, but I'm sure they're right.
Right, exactly. That imposter syndrome will get you.
Oh yeah. Humble beginnings.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think that's it's been an hour for us already. I don't think I've got much else to bring up at this point.
All good.
And
we've been chatting, about lots of stuff. So.
Yeah, we've kind of covered a whole range of things. We started off with what you did, then we went over into queer representation in role-playing games, and kind of went all over the place, which is okay.
Joe is a mouthy industry gay yet again.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Do you have anything coming up this week or next at all, or?
Not in specific, no. So we just released we just set up the pre-order pages for the new edition of Sacred Band, which is the LGBTQ plus team of superheroes, the novel I was talking about earlier, which is of course coming out again through Nisamba Press. And so we have put up pre-order pages for the book and an ebook bundle on the Green Running online store, as well as the Kindle edition on Amazon. Those are out there. Thank you. I appreciate it.
When can we expect those? Do we have a timeline yet?
I believe those are releasing in September. Yes.
Awesome. Yes. So we have the Chronicle system in August, and then Sacred Band 2nd edition in September.
Indeed we do.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be a fun second half of the year. Hopefully we can kind of counter off the first half with...
Here's hoping. Anything we can do to help to help lessen the grit of everything that's going on, we definitely want to do.
Yep. Yeah, here's the 2020.
Indeed. Right on the jaw.
Yep. All right, well, thank you very much for coming on and talking to us for the last hour. It was a pleasure as always.
Absolutely my pleasure. I had a blast as always. It's always
a
thorough joy chatting with you.
Thank you. And then, like we were talking before, we might have to do a little bit of a queer creators in gaming roundtable, because
I would love to do that.
Green Ronin has huge representation, and I think it's awesome. It it shines through in the games that are created.
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate that a whole lot.
Welcome. All right, so with that, I think we shall wrap this up. Last chance for anybody in the chat if they have any questions. For those of you who... Well, I was going to say for those of you who are going to tune in later, you can find us on YouTube. But chances are, if you made it this far, you've already found us on YouTube.
You know where to find it.
Yeah. If you haven't had the opportunity yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give me a little follow here on Twitch. And if you know where to find me on Twitter... Sorry, not on Twitter, on YouTube. A subscription there will be greatly appreciated, because you know what? I'm sick of my non-vanity URL. I can't wait to get an actual Foxfyre Studios YouTube URL. Till then, I'm stuck with www.tinyurl.com/FoxfyreYouTube, and that is FOXFYRE, followed by YouTube. Down below you have my Twitter. On our nameplates below our lovely pictures, you will see both Joe's and my Twitter accounts. From what I can see, we always are sharing all kinds of... yeah, especially lately. I think there was one that particularly caught my attention that you started yesterday in response to somebody else who was in response to somebody else, and there's a whole lot of mud.
That's me.
Yeah, shit is getting flung in all directions. Do you have any other social media presence? I know that you can we can find all of your books on Goodreads, I think it is.
You can indeed, yes. And if you, feel free to look through, and if you have liked any of them, feel free to leave reviews, but particularly if you pick up any of the novels. Please do leave a review on Goodreads or on Amazon or any other site that'll accept them, quite frankly. Reviews really do help to put books into people's line of sight.
Yeah, I was looking at the reviews. Well, not so much the reviews, but the stars on some of your works in the past. And, like, Sacred Band, #1. 4.47 average, 81 ratings. Like, you get a lot of good ratings on this stuff. You've had hundreds and hundreds of ratings.
When Sacred Band came out, we actually submitted it to both Publishers Weekly and Kirkus Reviews, who, of course, kind of the top of the industry review organizations and that sort of thing. And they both gave Sacred Band not only really good reviews, but they both gave them starred reviews.
Nice.
Which was incredibly flattering and honestly a little terrifying. And yes, I've gotten some incredibly kind reviews, since then, and so it's been good. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's got to be the highlight of the writing career, is actually having people comment and praise the work that you've put forth.
It can be really nice when people like your work, but it's even better when they see what you're doing and they appreciate it and say things like, I totally needed this book. Like, that's a little scary and emotionally overwhelming.
Yeah, I could get that.
But totally, like, I love it. I love doing it, and I wouldn't change it at all.
Yeah, and then with you saying that, we can expect more in the future?
Oh, yes, lots more. Lots more.
You've only just begun. So yeah, according to Troy, your ratings are so good that they're now using Joe's to rate others. I rate this 4 out of 5 Joe's.
Oh, Troy.
Yeah, I hope we're starting a trend here. So anyway, I figure we'll leave it on that note. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. Thank you for those in the future who are listening or watching us on some of the other areas that I'll post this to. If you want to see what else I've got going on this week, stop by on Saturday at 12 p.m. PST while we do a one-shot of Mithras. Or Mithras, depending on how you want to pronounce it. It is a D100 OSR type game, I think. We're playing Monster Island, I think it's called. I've never played the game before. A friend of mine is going to be running it for us, so we'll see how that goes. And then next Saturday, we will have Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition starter set playthrough going on. So I am looking forward to that. Like I was saying before, like I'm revised edition Vampire the Masquerade. Like my monitor is being propped up by five Vampire the Masquerade books. Dark Ages and a whole bunch of the revised core books, so it's going to be fun to play. And then hopefully I can get something worked out with the wonderful folks at Green Ronin to get some of their games going on the stream. I know I do have plans for Dragon Age, it's just a matter of when, not an if. And then the new Chronicle System game, Shattered Era, could be a fun addition to our lineup. But until then, thank you all for stopping by one more time, and we shall see you sometime in the very near future.
We shall. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.